It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchi, and thanks a lot for joining us. Another beautiful day here on the show. Campaign season is definitely going on hot and thick. A few presidential candidates are still not in the country. Some have come back in finally. It looks like things might be starting to kick off. But it looks like every single major political party is going through it with regards to how either to constitute the campaign committee or just internal wranglings of the party. And we're going into the first month of campaigns, and it looks like nothing solid has come out of a lot of the candidates yet. But we do have a long road ahead, about 4 months still to the February 28th general elections. And of course, we're not just looking at the presidential candidates. The elections are cross-board, both states and local. So fingers crossed things start to pick up and we stay on the message. We've had too many distractions with regards to all of the side attractions, whether it's a tribe or religion or who is deciding to cross carpet to where. We just want to hope and see that these candidates stay on the message and give Nigerians what their plans are. And when elections come around, we decide to vote who we want based on who has the best idea for us. But on Wednesday, the 5th of October, World Teachers' Day was celebrated, and it might have been overshadowed by all that's happening, especially with the ASU debacle, for want of a better word. It almost makes the entire educational system seem like that's all that's going on there. But teachers celebrated their day, and this year the theme was the transformation of education begins with teachers. We're going to be talking about that on the show today. And I'm joined here by Nene Dimo and Rotimi Iyitayo. Thanks for being here today. This theme, does that apply here? Because we do hear a lot that, you know, teachers are the foundation of everything, whether we like it or not. But considering all of the stories we hear, especially with the National Union of Teachers, which is a body that is supposed to sort of that has unionized what teachers do here, especially with government schools. Are we in a place to actually say confidently that transformation of education in Nigeria is still in the hands of our teachers? Or do we have parents now taking things in their hands? Because it looks like we don't know. I mean, let me not jump ahead of you, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, transformation in the education sector, it's not just the teachers. It's collective, because we're talking about the future of our country. So it's the teachers, it's the parents, it's the government. Everybody has their part to play in the education system. However, this year, the theme is focusing on what role the teachers play in this transformation.
Yeah. We hear so many stories, especially from several states. Kaduna has been in the picture, I think Ekiti at some point, about, you know, teachers who are subpar, where you have governors having them write exams and all of that. This is sort of a recurring theme these days, and it has made people lose a lot of faith in government schools. Private education, on the other hand, we hear a lot of stories about how they're not actually properly regulated. You go to school, your child comes first until they graduate, and when they go into secondary school, you realize these schools just do these things because they want more students to come in, and you believe your child is doing well while they're actually not. Regulation is still a problem. So it makes you wonder, with that basic level of education, how would you assess what Nigeria is doing from the teacher's perspective?
I think when you say Nigeria, you pretty much look at it from the angle that we're not doing enough, not that we're not doing anything at all. When it comes to teacher or the teacher in itself, you have to actually attack it from different levels. So we have the issue of teacher quality, which speaks about what happens within the classroom and beyond the classroom. But then we also must be mindful of the fact that we don't even have enough teachers. I was sharing on a platform some time ago that do you know there are teachers that actually shuttle between some schools just to teach one subject? And that just tells you that teacher shortage is a big menace within the education sector. So when we think about it from that perspective, I think that we need to think about not just teachers doing their work, because it's like the human anatomy, the physiology of a person. You have your kidneys, you have your heart. They are all doing different functions. So when we think about the teacher, it's not just the person in the classroom. It's the system that is responsible for the person in the classroom. That has to do with teacher quality, teacher control. That has to do with teacher development and training, even teacher reward as well. And all these things are like a composite thing. They come together. And when you have that, then eventually you can actually say the teachers are delivering an outcome or an output that is actually expected of them.
We do hear a lot that teaching is not very attractive. And this is not just a Nigerian conversation. Globally, I mean, I watched a program, interestingly, I think 2 days ago, about the US, where there was this sort of complaints about how teachers are underpaid and all of that. Yeah. And it was interesting to see it from a Nigerian perspective, where underpaid takes a whole different level. Is money the only reason why it's unattractive or seen as unattractive? I mean, we're hearing about teacher shortages. Why don't we have people trying to get into that profession, considering the high number of unemployment or the percentage of unemployment that we have? Is it just a money conversation? What else is the reason you think why?
It's not only the money conversation. Actually, the money does play a big role. I mean, who doesn't want to earn a big salary, or at least a salary that can take care of your family, you know? But in the case of teachers, what we see is that we have other issues that affect, you know, how we see the sector. So the conditions of service. You have a lot of teachers who, when they retire, they go back to the village because they've not saved enough. They don't have pensions, you know, that they can look to and say, okay, I've taught or I've been in service for this long and this is my reward. I know a lot of us still believe that thing that says the teacher's reward is in heaven, but no, we have to begin to put in place systems, you know, and structures such that teachers begin to not, you know, live a life of excesses, but at least be able to assess basic necessities of life. For instance, I believe that teachers should have special medical facilities just for them. There's nothing wrong with that. They should have access to education for their own children. You have a lot of teachers that they teach in highbrow schools and they simply just cannot afford for their own children to go to these kind of schools. So it's not attractive at all. And looking at it, yes, I get a lot of remarks, especially when I say, oh, I'm a teacher, and they're like, oh, wow, you look too good to be a teacher. But why do we have that sort of, you know, notion about teachers? So it's not just about the money, but it's also about the conditions of service. And with each profession, there should come those extra perks, which we see we don't seem to have that.
Is it possible to make up these deficits she's mentioned, you know, the conditions of service, infrastructure? I mean, we still see all these pictures of what our classrooms look like. And I'm not even talking rural areas. In some of our urban areas, you see the classrooms, where there are classrooms even. And you wonder, you know, is it possible for government to actually take on this fight? Or is it something that, because private schools now are the norm for a lot of people, we're starting to see that even seep into the tertiary level. But on the primary and secondary level, it looks like private schools are the first option, then the government schools coming. Can government take on this fight of this, you know, sort of deficit, the conditions, the infrastructure, the pay, considering how broke Nigeria is and will be for a while, whether we like it or not?
Well, that's a very good question. To be honest, the truth of the matter is, yes, government can. And when we're talking about championing the crusade of that deficit, government doesn't have to even pay from their purse. The first thing that government needs to do is to be able to point out a messaging that speaks about opportunity within the teaching profession. Unfortunately, for the past few years, if you were to look at it in recent times, emphasis has been on the teaching job as opposed to the teaching profession. And that's why it's not even attractive. Because if you think about it, you could talk about other professions, and you see the value chain along the career path. And so a teacher is not just thinking of the month pay. A teacher is thinking about his career level and career path. So what happens if I want to stop staying in the classroom to teach? Yeah. Can I migrate? Yes. To what? That's the question. Other people can move from one point A to point B easily, even sometimes move away from the location where they study or teach, even out of their country. And so government must begin to try to create a positive messaging. And when that messaging comes, everybody now sees the opportunity within education. It's happening from the technological perspective, but we need to drive it across the value chain, especially from the K-12 industry. That's kindergarten to SS3. We need to begin to see how government can easily say, we have some state government showing the way, and even sometimes when you see the recent reward of teachers. Now, the reward is just for a few. But what about taking opportunity for the routine itself? The teacher routine has to do with day-to-day. So we have the HMO effect. We have a situation where teachers can actually be trained. But the issue of training, you find out that the training costs and training development, if you ask an average consultant or those who actually organize trainings, the levy that they pass down is actually levy of infrastructure, not levy of content. Why? Because if you want to train, you need to rent a venue. The venue already puts a markup on the fee. But then think about if you have zonal training centers where people can take subsidized costs to be able to train. In other words, teachers can skill up, and then the entry level of skill, they're matching up with something that can also lead to a measure of remuneration as well. Yeah. So I think that front, when government needs to push, is the messaging, and then other industries begin to plug in. Because the truth of the matter is education must always meet industry.
I want to come to because I think there's a newly elected president of the NUT, National Union of Teachers, Audu Amba, has said that the challenges of shortage of teachers is a problem, poor infrastructure, inadequate funding. And this hits me, refusal of some states to implement the 30,000 naira minimum wage for teachers. 30,000 naira.
That is happening.
Not only is 30,000 naira shocking, it's the fact that some states can't even afford to pay that.
Exactly.
To teachers. I'm short of words.
When we're talking about the teaching profession, as you rightly said earlier on, you find out that there are a lot of private schools, offering services. And ideally, that's not what it should be. The private schools are supposed to support the government schools. So the government schools are supposed to, be at the front, be in charge, be the ones that are paying the big salaries. And the private schools are trying to, show up and ensure some kind of competition and covering up spaces that are not filled. But you find out that not only do we have these issues in the government sector of some states not being able to pay the 30,000, even in private schools, you have teachers earning as little as 15,000 naira or even less. Now, how
even worse than government schools?
Oh, yes. How? And it's not like they have an option. As Rotimi said, you teach, you want to leave the classroom. What's your other option? You teach in a private school, you want to go somewhere better. You don't even have that option of going to government because you're not sure that you're going to get the minimum. And Nigeria is one of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa that has the lowest amount of the budget allocated to education. So maybe we could start from there. I know that there are a lot of things that we struggle with in the country that need money. But I mean, education, I know someone might say, oh, you're biased because you're a teacher. But really, education solves a lot of problems, a lot. You educate a child, you educate so much more. You find out that even as a teacher, you're not only educating the children in your classroom, but you find out, and this is from personal experience, that you're also educating every single person that interacts with that child. So whatever level of education you're giving out to this child, is the same level of education that is getting to the grandma, is getting to the grandpa, is getting to the uncle, is getting to the auntie. And when you have a situation where the person that is supposed to teach the child is not happy, is not earning enough, is struggling, then, I don't know, it's like a problem inside a problem, inside another problem.
So I was looking through the budget proposal or the appropriation bill for 2023, and I think education has about $663.9 billion allocated for that. I've not seen it in detail. I don't know if you have, but of course, a huge portion of that money is going to go to appropriation. It's going to go to recurrent expenditure. We're not going to see a lot being done with infrastructure in that sector, as usual. When you see that figure, does it look like something that will have an effect in the coming year, you think, in that sector?
Yeah, it will have, of course, coming to look at it. Every budget has effect to who. That's the issue. It saddens me to see that most of the time our budget is actually tilting towards contract and vendor-driven. We need to think about education beyond just seeing education as tertiary, because even when you look at the number of schools government owns itself, is not as much, or in terms of comparison to the number of other people and other schools within the sector. But then when you think about it, you said something about recurrent expenditure. We have to ask ourselves, what's the kind of input and the data that was supplied for that figure? Because a lot of times you find out that they're same items. We are talking about building of walls, painting of walls, and we are moving beyond brick and mortar with the current education landscape. I feel that we need to have a data-driven budget so that as the figures increase, it's not just a symbol of hope, but the budget is now functional. The functionality of the budget. Yeah. For me, I think that our education sector is not functional because it's been politicized. So we have a political education system as opposed to just a functional education system. Okay. And that might be a problem.
I want to get a final word from the both of you now. Election is hot right now, whether we like it or not. But it's one of those sectors where you probably won't hear a lot of politicians talk about. Yes, the ASU strike is going on now, so that's probably where you will hear their voices on. What do you want to hear from the politicians in the coming months about their plans for education? What would make sense to you?
What would make sense to me? Wow, it's a whole lot, but I'm going to try to summarize it. What would make sense for me is, first of all, I would love to hear a candidate that can express genuine passion for education. A candidate that can speak out and, make us understand that he or she understands the importance of education. I mean, education is as important as health. And in my opinion, I've not come across any candidate yet that has been able to, who has that passion. Maybe they are there, maybe they need some pointers, I don't know. But I think it all starts from having a passion and intentionally deciding to, because there are a whole lot of things that they can do, but it must stem from somewhere. And I think it should stem from a genuine desire to change education in Nigeria.
Go to me very quickly.
Okay, so I'm looking at a candidate that will give in details how to address education mismanagement, how to address teacher shortage and teacher supply, teacher quality as well, and of course a clear-cut agenda for education across the value chain, not just tertiary, but across the value chain.
Thank you very much to the both of you. Fingers crossed, by this time next year when we're celebrating World Teachers Day, hopefully we're having better conversations.
Yes.
And all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna...